Hi, and welcome to the Pitlane, a Formula One podcast where we chat about everything Formula One. In this week's episode, we'll be discussing the 2024 Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort as we're back from the break. I am your host, Jordan Wynn, and alongside me is your co-host, Alden Kaywell. How you doing today, Alden?
Doing very well, Jordan. It's awfully nice to record another episode together.
Yeah, it's obviously been, 4 weeks because we did do a Belgian GP right before the break. And yeah, so it's been a little bit, but hopefully we can get right rolling into this.
Yeah, the official start of F1 silly season started. However, many driver positions were already signed up, closed up, but we had some more interesting stuff going on during the break. More news.
Yeah, let's start on that. I think we had the Carlos Sainz signing at Williams before we left for the break. There were rumors about Checo potentially getting replaced at Red Bull. That did not happen, as he is still with the team and he did race as a Red Bull driver at Zandvoort. Other news, Jack Doohan, Alpine's reserve driver, has been promoted as a full-time driver for next year in 2025. He was a reserve driver, I think, for at least 2 years. But yeah, he's done his time as a reserve, and I'm glad he got promoted.
Yeah, same here. Another Australian driver on the grid. Confirmed we'll have 2 for next year and potentially 3 if Daniel Ricciardo stays on the grid. So a lot of Australians out on the grid for Formula One next year.
And if we get Liam Lawson somehow is on the grid all at the same time, that would be 4 from that region. I forget what they call it. Don't they have a specific name of like the region that
they're
part of?
Osnaz or something. But yeah, with Liam Lawson, he's from New Zealand, so the Tasman Union.
Yeah, that'd be cool. A lot of Aussies on the grid, plus if Liam Lawson, which I still think deserves a seat. It'd be cool to see all of them in there.
Agreed. Yeah, same here.
Oliver Oakes was announced as the new team principal at Alpine, and I think he was the one that signed up Jack Doohan right away for next year, or that was like one of his first things he did. And he started at Zandvoort as his first big race, I guess, first big time race for him. And
yeah, he was down in Formula 2 or something before he got promoted up here to the big leagues.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah,
cool.
Hopefully he's there longer than the rest of the season, which seems to be Alpine's pace of team principals, is to just roll through them as they desire. But so hopefully he has more success than the other ones have previously.
Yeah. We're looking forward to seeing what he can do with the Alpine team.
Haas had a bit of a news this weekend, as I think the Dutch, I don't know, what do you call it?
Courts?
Yeah, the court system, or however it's set up, they told Haas that their assets would be seized if they didn't make the payments that they were supposed to Uralkali, the company that's owned by the Mazepins, as they were in a court ruling that they had to pay Uralkali back X amount of money, sponsorship money, because they cut them early during that COVID year, right? Or was that the war started? I think it was like same timing.
Yeah, 2021 then, or something like that.
Yeah. So yeah, their assets would be seized if they didn't make payment. And so they made payment on Friday to hopefully avoid getting their assets seized. A little interesting situation there.
Yeah, I think on Sunday they didn't leave like all the other teams on Sunday to get to Monza. But then come Monday when the banks opened, they were able to sort this whole thing out and get the money back to the Russians. The whole thing was weird because the Dutch were like working with a Swiss arbitrator so that the money could go from the Netherlands to Switzerland and then to Russia because the EU is not allowed to do any money with any Russian nationals. So like you said, a really unique situation that Formula One's not immune to, but certainly doesn't happen all that often. But kind of weird, kind of interesting, because it would have been very funny if Haas never showed up to Monza next weekend. Didn't race.
Or didn't show up to Zandvoort and then just went to Monza.
Oh yeah, that would be another one.
Yeah.
I imagine if they were getting seized up in the Netherlands, it probably would have happened in Monza in Italy too, but whatever.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, probably true, but interesting situation. Probably not unprecedented, like you said, but yeah, just different, I guess, this time around. And made payment. They were able to get out of there on Monday when, like you said, when the banks opened and the transfers went through. So, but it sounds like they should have taken care of this earlier, but just didn't, Gene Haas stuff. So, yeah. Should we get into the race weekend?
Yeah. Let's get into P1 on the Friday. Friday had a lot of weather. So a lot of interesting things went down between the 3 free practice sessions.
Yeah, P1 was wet, at least intermediate wet for sure. I think most drivers went out. A lot of them spun. I think there was like 4 or 5 drivers that spun in P1. I don't think anybody had any major damage in P1. Didn't like Leclerc not Leclerc, but was it a Haas driver? They hit a wall in P1.
I think it was Hulkenberg.
It was like a rear or something. It wasn't too bad. Yeah. But yeah, wet session, set up for practice 2. And I think Sainz had an issue, or he didn't get out on soft tires in P2. So I had no feeling on that going into qualifying, because in P3, it was also wet. Logan Sargent had a big crash, and his Williams started on fire. Someone took a picture of him jumping out of his car with the flames, and kind of sounded like he didn't even know there was a fire behind him when he got out, but glad he got out safely. But yeah, there's a little bit of sad news for Sargent coming in later this episode, or later that weekend.
Yeah. Free practice 1 and 3 were wet, but it was also like really, really windy. So the aerodynamics on the car were all out of sorts. And then with free practice 2 being the only dry session, like the teams were playing catch up pretty much all weekend. I don't know if Zandvoort holds a lot of other races during the year, but it looked like even with the rain, the rain washes away a lot of like the grip on the track. They just were, struggling to get tires down and rubber down on the circuit the whole weekend.
I think a couple of the events got canceled too. Some of the other races.
Sport series?
Yeah.
Oh, dang.
The Academy, that women's racing, they got canceled out. I'm sure.
Because of the weather?
Yeah. The storms were coming and stuff when they were supposed to race, so they got canceled out and stuff before it even started raining, because it looked so bad.
Wow.
Yeah, they saw the radars and said nope. Kind of like it was here a couple days ago, yesterday.
Oh yeah, yesterday. Yeah. Well, yeah. All that set up a really interesting like qualifying session, because we had some cars that were broken. We had some cars that, like you said, Sainz never went out on the softs, so he didn't know what he was getting into. But a lot of teams had basically spent 2 hours running their cars in the wet, not really knowing what to expect during qualifying. And we actually had because of that, some interesting results in qualifying. You want to take it away, Jordan?
Yeah. So notably, let's get into Q2. Both Lewis Hamilton and Carlos Sainz didn't get out of Q2. I guess those are the big names. Hamilton, I don't know, that Mercedes looked good in qualifying, but then all of a sudden, I don't know what happened, if traffic or something happened during Hamilton's flying lap or whatever it was. He didn't get a good lap time in. Carlos Sainz, like we said, he didn't really have a good feel for the set of softs, as his only flying laps on soft tires all weekend were during qualifying. So that was difficult for him. I believe Hamilton also got a penalty. Did he get a 3-place penalty for impeding Sergio Perez? Is that correct?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so that set him back even further. Surprises getting into Q3. The Williams of Alex Albon got in. I think Pierre Gasly did too. Is that right? Or did he?
Yeah. No, Gasly did. Yeah.
Yep. So that was big. I think they both brought updates, but Albon actually ended up getting disqualified from qualifying because his floor was too wide. I didn't look at the numbers to see how too wide it was, but
I was trying to look it up here before the episode, and I didn't see any official measurements saying it was. I remember during the broadcast, they mentioned it was only a couple millimeters.
oh no,
which seems silly, but also rules are rules, and it's too wide.
Somewhere.
That's done. Yep.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Because it seemed like those upgrades were working really well. Hopefully, it's not due to the couple millimeters, but yeah, disqualification for Albon, so we had to start at the back. Logan Sargent didn't qualify because his car was still getting repaired. And we had Lando Norris on pole. And it was by, 3.5 tenths or so over Max?
Yeah, sizable margin considering the length of the circuit.
Yeah, it was huge. So great qualifying for him. Not much Max could do. And Piastri ended up P3. Followed by, I think, Russell was 4th and Leclerc 5th? Or was it Perez?
No, I think you got that right. Leclerc or Perez was like 5th or 6th. Yeah, it was like
Perez was
Russell.
5, Leclerc was 6.
Okay. Yeah, but it was sort of like a tale of two cities. Hamilton had a really poor qualifying, whereas Russell kind of qualified in the top 5 or 6. Sainz and Leclerc kind of the same thing as what happened with Hamilton and Russell. Sainz was out in Q2, but Leclerc qualified really well. So maybe certain drivers just, they split strategies, split sort of what they were trying to do, and it didn't work off. But as we saw during the race, Hamilton and Sainz both ended up having some pretty strong race performances. So, maybe they just, again, tried something different during qualifying and it didn't really pay out, or they were aiming for the race.
Yeah. Side note too. I did see, I was paying attention. I saw like Lance Stroll he was like top 5 in both Q1, Q2, and then, obviously I don't think that car was quick enough to be in the top 5, but he even dropped off behind Alonso in Q3, which I thought was just interesting that he was pretty on it early on, and then last session just couldn't find it. I think they only did 1 lap on each of them in Q3, but yeah, Stroll looked good early and then faded, but it was a good surprise to see him in Q3 as I feel like he struggles in qualifying a lot, but it was good to see him up there. That's all. Is what I was getting at.
Yeah. No, he qualified P8 right behind Fernando Alonso, only like a little over 2 tenths behind. So Gasly ended up being 9th, and then with the adjustments because of people's changing positions,
Yep.
That was Saturday, and then we got to the race on Sunday.
Yeah, and I think I forget who was doing the questions during after qualifying, but I think Norris was asked if he was gonna be able to lead getting out of the start and getting to turn 1 this weekend, and he was like, "Oh, well, why would you ask me that?" Well, it's notably because I don't think he's led getting out of turn 1 at any of the times he's qualified on pole so far.
Correct. That is correct. Maybe not turn 1, but by the end of lap 1.
Definitely not by the end of lap 1. But yeah, it's been early stages. Mostly notably, his starts have been poor, it seems like, for whatever reason. Whether it's McLaren or it's Norris, with whatever's happening with the shifts or throttle control, whatever it is. Had some poor starts. Little foreshadowing. Norris starts on pole. Lights go out. Max next to him, and they both got off the line, but Norris had some crazy wheel spin. He was immediately behind Max. It couldn't have been it felt like it was 50 feet, and he was already behind Max.
Yep.
And he already has like a 15-foot lead or whatever, Yeah, he was already
more than that. Yeah.
Yeah. So he ends up coming out, I think, second out of turn one. Piastri, same situation. He got away poorly. Crazy wheel spin too. He almost lost 2 places, but he was stuck behind Russell at the start. So it wasn't a great start for the McLarens.
No, they did not have good starts. They had good reaction speeds. We saw the graphics on the telecast, but yeah, they just maybe it's something mechanical about the car that just doesn't do launch control very well. So they'll have to dig into it, see if they can find some more information on it. But weird situation. By the end of lap 1, Max was pretty well out front. I think he broke the DRS
Immediately
in the first lap. Yeah. So it took what was it, 7 or 8 laps before Norris could sort of stabilize the gap between them and start making his way back towards Max.
Yeah, and within the first stint, he does just that. He gets back in DRS, and once he got there, he came out of that last bank corner within range of attacking and went right past him on the straightaway. Didn't even have to make it to the corner, if I remember it correctly.
Yeah, it was either like on entry or just before.
Yeah, so he was on top of him. It's not a long straightaway. So it's good to see Norris get past him, meaning that McLaren is very fast around that circuit. And really, it was an uncontested race in the end for Norris after that point. McLaren's better on the tires. Max pitted early, or not really, just I guess normal, but Norris pitted on the next lap just to cover, and he was gone. I think he was up by 6 or 7 seconds immediately after the pit stop, and after that he just drove away and won the race by 22 seconds or so, almost.
Yeah,
23.
once that McLaren's in free air, it just runs away.
Yeah, disappeared. And there's nothing anybody could do about it. So yeah, Norris ends up winning his second race, right?
Yep, second race of the season.
Second race of the season and second ever. So good for him. Look good doing it. We'll see if there's a title challenge on the cards or not. He did
get fastest lap, right? So
he did.
He brought back 1 extra point.
He would need to be perfect, I think, is the conversation without help from Max. I think for Norris to win the title, and if Max finished second in every scenario, Norris has to win every race and get every fastest lap. I think that's what it was.
It's not impossible, but that's a tall order.
Yeah, but that's assuming Max is also second every race, which won't happen. But he also
it's also assuming Norris is winning every race.
Correct.
Yeah.
But yeah, the challenge is definitely on for constructors, though. But we'll get into that in a minute.
Yep.
We'll stick with McLaren here. Norris wins. Everybody's excited. Piastri kind of had a completely different race, it felt like, than Norris, other than the start. Piastri also wheel spin off the line. Like I said previously, he almost got passed by Leclerc as well. Definitely got passed by Russell. He was stuck behind him the entire first stint. Leclerc pitted. Russell pitted the next lap. Leclerc gets by Russell on the undercut. Piastri goes very long. I think he goes like another 7 laps or so, 7 or 8 laps.
Yeah, just a little too long probably.
Yeah, to get that offset. And he was able to get by Russell on the offset, but once he got to Leclerc, he was stuck. And I don't even know if he got next to him. He might have one time on the straightaway, but I don't know if he burned up the tires right away and didn't ease them in well enough, or the Ferrari maybe just quicker in that straight line potentially and just couldn't get by him. So he ends up stuck in P4. It admittedly by him, it was a disappointing race. Knew we should have gotten more out of it. And I think just kind of lost it at the start, really. So a little bit unfortunate for him, but they're still making up big points on Red Bull on that constructors title.
Yeah, so they got what, first and
fourth.
So yeah, that's a big haul. It was noticeably Piastri's performance was noticeably different from Norris's, like you mentioned. I wonder if that had anything to do with like being stuck behind some slower cars. Zandvoort's a very skinny circuit. There's a lot of really weird turns, especially like between like 1 and 5, 1 and 7. It's really difficult to follow the other drivers. So I wonder if he had difficulty following Leclerc for a bit, or Russell, and just couldn't get past him.
Yeah,
It's weird.
it was weird.
But Max and Checo had different things going on as well. Checo had some of the upgrades that they brought to the circuit, and Max didn't.
Yeah, rumor was that Max went back to an old spec floor. Is that right?
Is that because? I don't know. I just knew that Perez had some upgrades that Max didn't, and Max obviously was having, visibly you could see him having some issues, and he was on the radio as well talking about how he didn't like certain entries, certain corners. The just car wasn't turning, or it was oversteering, understeering. I wonder how much of that was, if you, like you said, if there was an older spec on the car because they just ran out, or something was damaged, or if they only had certain sets of the upgrades and they gave them to Perez because maybe that's like they're on rotation. Maybe it was his turn. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure the reasoning or what the situation was, but yeah, it did sound like he was struggling most of the race. He said he wasn't surprised how quickly Norris got by him, and he knew he wouldn't be able to hold him back. So yeah, Max ends up P2. I wouldn't say disappointing weekend for them, but I think Max knows he's in for a little bit of a fight here. I don't think he's too worried yet about the title. There's a lot of tracks to go. I think there's some tracks that will probably go Red Bull's way or more in favor for them. But it just seems like McLaren overall on most tracks is probably a quicker car in general.
Yeah. Yeah.
Perez, P6 after starting P5. I think he went long as well on that first stint and kind of got shuffled back. I think he was kind of just in P7 or P8. And yeah, I don't know. He kind of just stayed there. And with Russell pitting late for a set of softs, who was in, I think, 5th at the time. So Perez was in 7th, Sainz in 6th, Russell in 5th. Sainz was flying for some reason in that Ferrari. He was moving. He was catching Russell. I think he had just gotten the DRS, and Mercedes called him into pit just to try something. They're not really in a fight with anybody right now. They're almost 100 points behind Ferrari, so I think them putting him on a set of softs, Russell that is, to try and get something out of it, try and catch back up, didn't pay off for Russell. So that essentially just promoted Perez to P6 and Sainz to P5. And it was a long, convoluted way of saying Perez ended up P6. But yeah.
Yeah, it had some shuffling there in the middle of this race because some drivers went really long on that last stint, and others, like Russell, he ended up coming in. Maybe he overcooked his tires trying to pass people, but Ferrari ended up having a really good race. They kind of didn't look very good in the dry session on Friday, but they ended up being P3 and P5. And with Sainz's like poor qualifying, that was a bit surprising to see Leclerc on the podium and Sainz finishing P5. That was crazy.
Yeah, Leclerc's got George, and Piastri, and those were the only people he probably could have gotten at that time. And he only finished a few seconds off Max too, in the end. So that kind of shows the pace that Ferrari had this weekend.
Or the lack of pace that the Red Bull had.
Yeah, that too.
But either way, it stands,
But, I mean, it's clear they were either the second or third fastest car on the grid this weekend.
Yeah.
I don't think they expected that at all after the practice sessions. But yeah, Leclerc with the unexpected podium. Sainz P5 after starting P10. Huge for him. Like we said, he was flying on the hards late in that race, coming through the field. Mercedes, George ends up P7 in the end after pitting for that set of softs late. Doesn't get fastest lap either. Hamilton was in P8 after starting 14 after the disqualification. of Albon. He had the fastest lap up until Norris taking it from him on the very last lap of the race. And I know he wasn't happy about that because he asked his engineer if he
should go again. Yeah.
And he didn't. And Hamilton was moving quickly too. It sounded like he was on the pace of Norris on that last stint. Because he was catching George as well. But yeah, and then he said, nope, you should be good. And Norris took it from him on the last lap of the race. So unfortunate for Hamilton not to get that extra point, but probably more unfortunate that Mercedes finds them the fourth fastest team this weekend.
Yeah, they'd had some really good performances before the break, and then I don't know if they just kind of knew that this circuit wasn't going to be their deal, but P7 and P8, I mean, it's a little uncharacteristic from what we'd seen in the last couple of weeks, but I guess overall for the season, it's not uncharacteristic for them to be in 7th and 8th.
Alpine, Pierre Gasly, points finish, P9. So I'd say a successful weekend for Alpine, getting 2 points this weekend, trying to make up ground on Haas and V-Carb. Esteban Ocon, not a good weekend. I don't think he made it out of Q1 this weekend. And so at that point, you're kind of stuck in the midfield. And at this track, it's very difficult to get by. It ends up P15. Aston Martin, Fernando Alonso was 10th this weekend. Lance Stroll, P13, 1 point for them for this weekend. Kind of I don't know. That's just kind of where they are right now. Kind of feels like they're the 5th or 6th fastest team on any given weekend, depending on the strengths of, those few teams below them.
Yeah, or if Alonso puts in a really good weekend, sometimes he's like P8 or 9. But, that Gasly and P9 ahead of Alonso is, I think, a little uncharacteristic for what we've seen during the season. I know I saw Alonso passing Hulkenberg, who ended up P11, to get that last points finish. So that was actually really close between 9, 10, 11, Gasly, Alonso, Hulkenberg, 3 different cars, all vying for the last few points in the top 10. It was, which is good. We want to see that competition, but certainly that Alpine seemingly a little out of place. But maybe with the upgrades, that's good. What we can expect from them, because that would be nice. That would be beneficial for everyone.
Yeah, especially Alpine given their situation right now.
Yeah.
But yeah. Lance Stroll, P13. Yeah, I don't know, not much to say there. Just kind of like we kind of said, Aston Martin kind of feels like they're just in the middle with the rest of that pack right now, depending on the track or depending on Alonso's performance. Brings us to Haas. Hulkenberg had a pretty good race, actually, but ends up P11. Magnussen, P18. I think he pitted early and just dropped like a stone after that. V-Carb. Ricardo, P12. Yuki, P17. He did a 2-stop this weekend. Clearly didn't pay off. Williams, Albon was P14 after his disqualification, and Sargent actually with a decent race at P16. And Sauber was P19 with Bottas and Zhou P20. And notably, the only cars that were 2 laps down at the end of the race.
Pretty bad.
Yeah. I know we kind of ran. Sorry, go ahead.
No. I would it's a self-fulfilling prophecy being that far back because of all the blue flags. You end up pitting more. So I don't think it's really truly indicative of their pace. I mean, they are the slowest car, but they're not 2 laps slower. I mean, that'd be 2 minutes,
Over
slower
2 minutes.
per lap. Yeah.
Like 3 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
maybe
probably
it is more like 3
minutes, but
it's a lot. But yeah, actually, like the Williams both had really good races, all things considered. There was a lot of battling during the middle part of the race. Lots of cars, a lot of drivers like battling for position in the middle pack, all fighting for the last few points. So, it wasn't just things going on out front, but with Lando running away and there not really being any battles, Piastri couldn't get by or close really. All the action that we saw was kind of like in the bottom half or sort of like that middle pack.
Yeah, there are definitely moments where they were showing some of the upper field runners catching up to the mid pack that was in like a pack of 3 or 4, and then having to go aside one by one while they were battling, and then let the leaders through, and then get back into their own battles and stuff, and trying to hold position at the same time. It was interesting from that aspect, but otherwise, I know we kind of set it off here before we started. It was kind of a boring race in the end, for race after the break. No yellow flags. I think you said for like 6 straight races there were no safety cars.
Yeah.
Which is
not that we think that the excitement should come from drivers failing or having crashes. Excitement. Right. But when that happens, it definitely introduces some chaos or some risk or some different strategies to the races for the drivers that are still left out there to be able to try and salvage something or try something risky. But yeah, it was a little bit boring for a little bit of it, but we're looking forward to Monza, and we think that will offer some more passing because of the nature of the circuit.
And they did some alterations too at Monza. They widened up turn 1, I think. Turns 1 and 2.
Oh, wow.
It's the same, like, what do you call it?
Profile?
Yeah, same profile. I was going to say format, but that's not right. Yeah, same profile, but it's just widened up a little bit for the wider cars and stuff. Basically try to modernize it a little bit. I guess that's the big thing that they did, other than some gravel stuff and some track rework and repaving. I think they added a bridge or removed a bridge somewhere. There's some stuff that they did. They did a lot of work on it, so we'll see what it looks like when we get there. I haven't seen a lot of pictures, but I just saw one today with the reprofiled turns 1 and 2, and it looks the same, just a little bit wider for everybody.
Wow, that'd be looking forward to seeing that. So we'll see how that shakes down. But yeah, who do you have for? Let's get into winners and losers for this weekend. Who do you have for your winner, and then I'll offer mine.
My winner is Ferrari this weekend. I was gonna say McLaren, but I felt like that was too obvious. No offense if you did that. But I had Ferrari just because it was very unexpected, especially based on the practice sessions and where Carlos Sainz started. He was able to get up, to 5th from 10th, which is huge, and Leclerc moved up 2 positions as well to get on the podium. So very positive weekend for them going into their second home race of the year. What about you?
Yeah, I was, if you had asked me right at the end of qualifying, I might have said Albon. Obviously, he was disqualified. So that kind of threw a wrench in that. Honestly, McLaren did have a very good weekend. I mean, P1 and P4 is solid. That's what they want. That's what they need to win the Constructors' Championship. But I'm going to go with a little bit of a dark horse here and actually do Gasly and P9. Alpine haven't scored a lot of points. They have a new team principal. It's awfully a good start for him to get points on his debut as a team principal. They've also sorted out their driver for next season. So hopefully there's some calm in the storm or the chaos over at Alpine. And this is just the beginning of a more stable environment for the drivers who are going to be there for the rest of this year and next year to build on and move forward in a way that they can sort of build on. So I'm going to go with Gasly / Alpine for winners.
I like that.
Even though Ocon finished P15, we talked about that. Maybe there were some upgrades involved in there that sort of drove different results for them. But yeah, that's what I'm gonna go for Gasly.
What about your loser?
Yeah, I'm gonna talk about this over the weekend, the course of the weekend rather than just the race. But I'm gonna go with Williams. They had one car disqualified from qualifying, one car not even make it to qualifying because it was busted up in free practice 3, finishing P14 and P16. Obviously, you're not scoring points there, but then also, they fired their driver post race, which were, it's a good transition. But yeah, Williams overall.
Yeah, let's get into that, as I had the same thing. Williams with a tough weekend, for all the reasons you just mentioned, and then some, knowing that Logan Sargent was essentially fired this weekend from his full-time job as a driver for Williams, and he is being replaced by Franco Colapinto. Does that sound right?
Argentinian driver who's currently down in F2 in the Williams Junior Academy or whatever.
Yeah, currently, I mean, this is mostly the first I heard of him, as I haven't followed F2 much this year. It's currently in 6th place. He has 1 win, 2 second places in F2. James Vowles, in their statement, said that, this is their best chance or best option to score points with that car. Whether or not that's true, we'll find out. But very unfortunate to see Logan Sargent replaced this weekend, or after this weekend, as he's kind of had a rough go this year. Not all of it his fault, in my opinion. Didn't have the same car as Albon. Had to give his car to Albon. Other things. So yeah, not a lot of confidence for him really at the beginning of the year, and I think things just kind of spiraled a little bit from there for him. So yeah, really unfortunate. We'll see what an F2 driver, can do. We saw it earlier this year with Behrman in a Ferrari. Obviously, that's a different car earlier in the season. He was able to get points at his first go and only go. We'll see if Franco can do the same. We'll see if he has the same upgrades that Albon does going into Monza. I guess that's kind of the big thing. How are you going to compare? And yeah, he knows he's not auditioning for this specific seat next year as well. Whether or not that adds more pressure, I don't know. But as Carlos Sainz has that second seat at Williams, but yeah, maybe he's auditioning for future seat.
Correct. Yeah. It is right. I don't know. I feel obviously very bad for Logan Sargent. Maybe a little bit of our American bias is coming through. We wish Logan the best. It's too bad he didn't have a better season. Like you mentioned earlier in the season in Australia, he had to give up his car completely to Albon. And then, he had, Williams was short on parts. They had only 2 chassis. So there was some damage. He technically, he crashed the car in Japan. But yeah, a lot of things just didn't go his way. You mentioned that. So I feel bad for him. Franco Colapinto's got to come through and score some points to make this look like a good move. Logan hadn't scored any points. He was one of 3 drivers who's yet to score points this year. So if this young kid can come through and, introduce some speed and sort of push Albon a little bit further also to sort of keep improving and, keep the whole team moving forward. That's what he's got to do, because like you mentioned, he's only got 8 or 9 races here before the end of the season. But we know it'll be Sainz's seat next year. So maybe there is less pressure. Maybe there's more. We'll find out. But yeah, I'm curious to see how this young guy does. He's we don't know much about him, but he'll be given the opportunity to show us what he's got.
Yeah, he gets. He does get Monza first, so not to say that he's easing into it, but comparatively, the next 2 after Monza are Baku and Singapore. So it should be those next 2 after Monza should be a good challenge for him to see how he does in an F1 car.
Yep. going to be some tough circuits. Going to be, but at the same time, if he's able to impress in these first 3 races, he could end up getting a really solid reserve driver role next year, and then maybe even get an opportunity the year after that with, if it's not Williams, another team that needs a driver that, they know has done it.
Right. And there's still, what, 2 seats up? 1 seat, 2 seats technically?
The Sauber seat and
the
Mercedes
seat, but I think we know where that's going. But
yep.
Yeah, so 1 probably real seat to fill yet that we know of. Yeah, we'll see what he does in the next few races and the rest of the year, and hopefully he does well. Really, we just want the drivers to do well. We don't ever want to see someone lose their job like this. So
right, hopefully Logan can find another race seat somewhere in another series and bounce back and win some races.
Yeah, that'd be fun to see. So we get in the standings. Some driver standings here. Max at 295. Norris gains some ground. He's 70 points behind. 225. Leclerc behind him. Piastri, Sainz, Hamilton, Perez, Russell. And then Alonso's kind of by himself in no man's land. At 50, Stroll's 10th. Hulkenberg and Tsunoda are tied at 22. And goes down the rest of the list. Tsunoda... I said that. Ricardo, Gasly, Bierman, Magnussen, Ocon, Albon, Zhou, Sargent, and Bottas. Those last 3, as you mentioned, no points, and doesn't seem like Sargent's going to get any more this year. Constructors, McLaren is only 30 points behind Red Bull, so that's the big thing to watch here. They're clearly the best car on the grid. Seems like they'll probably catch them, but we'll see how these next few races go. The trajectory that they're on. Ferrari at 370. 34 points behind McLaren, so actually not that far back either. Mercedes almost 100 behind Ferrari. Aston Martin, VCarb, Haas, Alpine, Williams, and Sauber.
Yeah, Williams is definitely sort of falling behind the rest of the teams. Alpine scored 4 points in the last 2 races, which isn't a lot, but it's enough to put a gap between Williams and Alpine. It'd be really tough for Williams to catch Alpine with sort of like 9th, 10th place finishes. And they definitely would need double points finishes, which goes into the decision that they made. But even above that, right, like if Williams can supplant Alpine for 8th position, it'd be even tougher for them to get up to 7th with Haas on 27. So starting to see the spread in the standings, especially at the lower half, but there's still a lot of points and a lot of races left to go. So we'll see where these guys go. And right at the top, we got battles at the top too. So a lot of things to keep us interested.
Yeah, should be still fun second half of the season. Like you said, we probably got about 10 races left, maybe not quite that, 9 or 8 races. But yeah, should be fun last go of it. Well, this has been your host, Jordan Wynn, and my co-host Alden Cawell, signing off, and we'll see you next week.
See you next time.
See ya.